Back tomorrow evening. Please be at home. The words glowed on Claire's phone screen, cold and final. Short. Uneasy. Her fingers tightened around the device. No explanation. No detail. Just that one line. It had been 4 long days since she'd heard his voice. 4 days without the faint creak of the stairs at night, without the soft thud of a cup being set down in the kitchen. The silence in the house was heavier now, pressing against her chest. She had told herself he was just busy in Kingsford, but the worry kept slipping through uninvited. Was he hurt? Had the presentation gone wrong? Or was something else keeping him away? The message sat there like a riddle she couldn't solve. She exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar ache of uncertainty. For months earlier, a stranger had appeared on her garden wall. It started with rain, and a boy who had nowhere left to go. Willillaford was a quiet town, the kind of quiet that clung to its cobbled streets and seeped into the walls of Claire's 2-story stone house. For years that quiet had been her companion, and her burden. Since Peter's passing, every tick of the mantel clock echoed a little too loudly. That afternoon the sky hung low and heavy. Rain slicked the streets in silver as Claire walked home from the market, her wicker basket swinging at her side. Then she saw him, sitting on the low stone wall by her front garden. Shoulders hunched. Jeans damp at the knees. A worn leather satchel at his side. His head lifted at her approach, revealing tired eyes that belonged to someone far older than his 22 years. His name was Daniel. Student housing had thrown him out. Couldn't keep up with the rent, he said. She didn't think. She didn't weigh the risks. The words simply left her mouth. I have a spare room upstairs. It's warm, and the roof doesn't leak. Minutes later, he stood in her hallway, dripping onto the old Persian rug, and feeling for the first time in days that maybe the night ahead wouldn't be so cold. Neither of them knew that day would change both their lives. It was never spoken out loud, but kindness became their language. It began quietly. The kind of quiet that slips in without anyone noticing. One evening Claire made too much shepherd's pie, or at least that's what she told herself. She left a plate at the top of the stairs with a simple, "In case you're hungry." When she came back later, the plate was empty. Washed. Placed neatly on the landing. A few days later, a gust of autumn wind blew the garden gate off its latch. By the next morning, it didn't just close again. It swung smooth and silent on freshly oiled hinges. Daniel never mentioned it. Then there were the afternoons when Claire would find him sweeping leaves from the front path or carrying her groceries inside without being asked. No fanfare. Just done. Their conversations over tea became a quiet ritual. Some days they talked about the weather or the little quirks of the old house. Other days, stories from their past slipped out. Hers of youthful dreams and roads not taken, his of a childhood in a farming village far from the cobbled streets of Willillaford. Laughter came easily now. So did silence. Somewhere along the way Claire stopped thinking of Daniel as a tenant. He felt more like the younger brother she never had. And Daniel, for the first time in years, felt like he truly belonged somewhere. But under the surface, he was hiding something. Sometimes, what people hide says more than what they share. Claire began to notice small things. The way Daniel sometimes slipped out in the morning without breakfast. How his portions at dinner were always smaller than hers, and how he'd wave off any offer for seconds. One afternoon she returned from the post office earlier than usual. Through the kitchen doorway she saw him hunched over the counter, carefully counting coins into a small brown envelope. "What's that for?" she asked, keeping her tone light. Daniel froze for a moment before answering. "My mum's been unwell. Medicine's expensive. I try to send her something each week." Claire felt a quiet ache in her chest. "And what about you?" He gave a faint, almost apologetic smile. "I'll manage. I always do." She didn't push. Not then. But the image of him standing there, measuring out every coin, stayed with her. She didn't know it yet, but soon she'd make a choice that would change his future. One evening, he burst through the door with news that would turn the house upside down. The wind had left his cheeks pink, his eyes bright. "I've been shortlisted," he said, almost breathless. "For what?" Claire asked, setting down her book. "The National Scholars Presentation. Top students from all over the country. If I do well, it could mean full funding for my degree. Maybe even a placement after graduation." Claire felt a rush of pride, and then saw the hesitation flicker across his face. "What's wrong?" "There's a travel fee. Materials. It's more than I can afford right now." She didn't even pause. "I'll cover it." "Claire, I can't." "You can," she interrupted gently. "And you will." This isn't charity, Daniel. Think of it as an investment in someone with talent to make a difference. From that night on, their evenings changed. Daniel spread notes across the coffee table. Claire listened, asked questions, even suggested sharper phrasing. The fire crackled beside them, the scent of tea curling through the room as his confidence grew with each rehearsal. Then came the day he left, and the silence that followed. At first, she thought he was just busy. The morning he left for Kingsford was sharp and cold, the kind that made each breath bloom white in the air. Claire stood with him on the station platform, handing over a paper bag with sandwiches. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ready," he said, though she caught the flicker of nerves in his eyes. The train doors closed and she watched until the last carriage disappeared. The platform felt strangely empty without him. For the first day she busied herself, dusting shelves, baking bread, telling herself he'd call soon. By day 2 the quiet in the house felt heavier. By day 3 she tried his phone. It rang and rang until voicemail answered. "Just wondering how it's going," she said, forcing cheer into her voice. "Call when you can." Day 4. Still nothing, until her phone buzzed. "Back tomorrow evening. Please be at home." No explanation. No detail. She stared at the message, relief and unease tangling together. She had no idea what he was bringing with him. When the front gate clicked, she knew it was him. Claire set down the carving knife and wiped her hands on a tea towel. Moments later, the door opened, letting in a rush of cold air, and Daniel. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes bright, and both hands were tucked behind his back. "You made it," she said, steadying her voice. "I told you I would," he replied, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But I brought something with me." He stepped into the firelight and brought his hands forward, a sleek black frame wrapped in gold ribbon. Inside was a crisp certificate, embossed with an official seal. "First place," he said, voice trembling just slightly. The judges said it was one of the best presentations they'd ever seen. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a medal on a deep blue ribbon and placed it gently on the mantelpiece. Then came a plain white envelope. "Prize money. Enough to pay you back for the rent, and everything else." "Daniel," she began. "You gave me more than a room," he said softly. "You gave me a chance to keep going." She felt her throat tighten. It wasn't the money that moved her, it was that he had carried this moment in his heart for months. And he wasn't done yet. Some doors, once opened, never close again. The dining table glowed under candlelight. Roast lamb rested on a serving platter, Victoria sponge waiting on the sideboard. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. They ate slowly, talking about Kingsford, the presentation, the train ride home. At one point, Daniel leaned back in his chair and smiled. "I'm not going anywhere, you know, not unless you throw me out." Claire chuckled. "You'd have to do something pretty awful for that to happen." The conversation faded into a comfortable silence. Not the hollow silence that had once filled the house, but the warm, steady kind that settles between people who've become family without saying the word. Outside, the town of Willillaford lay quiet under the night sky. Inside, the little stone house glowed with a light no lamp could make. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is simply open your door.